Hi, I'm Mindy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my wrap-up for the Indie Accords Readathon. And I decided to split the books that I read for the Readathon up from the rest of the books I read for the month because I have read so many books this month. I ended up having my best month of the year. I read 17 books. Most of them were pretty short, but I ended up reading like 500 more pages than I usually do, or from my highest month of the year so far. So that's exciting. That's why I decided to split my wrap up into two videos for books. So Indie Accords Readathon was so much fun. It was created and run by Lana from Lore and Lullabies, so thank you, Lana, for putting on a great readathon. The Discord channel had so many lively discussions and good-natured smack talk, and it was just a great time. I ended up reading 10 things for the Indie Accords readathon for a total of 1,940 pages. The first book that I read is Price Manor, The House That Bleeds by Jamie Stewart. And I did a full review video on this book, and I'll have that linked down below if you want to hear more about it. But basically, it's a haunted house story unlike any other. And this house is capable of some very strange things. I also read a collection of horror short stories, Myths and Megaliths by McCarthy. And this was a slow, dark, creeping collection, very gothic atmosphere. So great atmosphere, great points of view. Like one of the stories is told from the point of view of a mountain, I think, and then one is all about a fishing lure, which is interesting stories. But they were kind of slow burn gothic tales, so if you're not into that thing, it might not be for you. Another ebook that I read was Sentinel by Starling, and I actually started reading this one last year for Indie Accords, and then this year it had been an entire year, so I started over from the beginning to try to figure out what happened in the first 10% and then finished it this year. Yay me. Sentinel, kind of a creature feature, but there was a whole lot more going on in this story than just a creature killing everybody. Yeah. It had great characters, and there was this mystery, a disappearance in this book that we're trying to figure out. And it's about this family, mother, father, and a son. And the father of the family, like at 4 in the morning, sees this weird creature walking through the meadow behind their house, and some weird things start happening in the community, and every night at 4 a.m. they can see this creature going through the meadow right behind their house, like super close to the house. And there's a bit of a mystery. The father is trying to figure out what's going on with this creature. I don't want to say any more than that because I don't want to give spoilers, but it was a very good story. I had emotional connection to these characters and wanted them to turn out with things all right. I will say that. Very, very good story. I read another book of short stories. This one is The Razorblades in My Head by Donnie Goodman. These are quick, fun stories. I love this collection quite a bit. All of the stories were punchy and interesting, and I had a lot of fun reading it. And it didn't take me too long because it totally kept my interest all the way through. Finally read Eric LaRocca's novella, Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. This isn't my favorite Eric LaRocca book, but I did like it. I can see some of the negative things that I've heard about it. Like, I totally know where they're coming from. I heard that there was one part that went too far. I know exactly what part they're talking about, and it was a lot. It was a pretty terrible story in there, but I think that there was a purpose for that story, and I think it didn't bother me as much as some others. And I've heard that it gets kind of comically terrible at the end. And I know exactly where they're coming from as well, but it didn't quite become ridiculous for me. It was still in the holy cow, that is super gross territory. Yeah. So it was right on the edge there of, will I like it or not? And I fell on the liking it side. I read this haunted house story from Dane Cobain, Come On Up to the House. This had the novella and then the screenplay that he originally wrote this story as, that he then turned into a novella. And I love a haunted house story, and this was a very good one. I knew I was in for a very scary haunted house story right from the very first scene. It was bloody, spooky, and full of dread. I read another Eric LaRocca book for Indie Accords, and this one is You've Lost a Lot of Blood. I do love Eric LaRocca's books. This one was pretty great. This is an interesting novella because there's like several parts that it's split into, and then between the parts there's a poem, a horror poem, and a horror short story, like very short, and they are all connected in theme and all about a central person that either these stories were about or written by one person. And I thought that was a really interesting way to put this novella together. They all worked well together, I think, and I enjoyed all of the stories, poems, novella. This novella was, it was kind of a sci-fi horror. It's about a girl and her brother who are on their own. They're struggling to make it. The woman gets offered a job in the home of a famous game maker to work on this game that he is putting out. And it goes to some wild technology-based and psychological-based horror places, and I loved it. I also read The Cockroach King by Andrew Cull. Andrew Cull wrote one of my favorite books, Remains. So I was really looking forward to reading something else by him, and this is a novella and 2 short stories put together to make this collection, I guess. And I especially liked the novella, The Cockroach King. One of my favorite tropes, a woman, a single mother, and her baby move into a new home that she thinks is perfect, a new start after her mother dies of cancer, and she's dealing with a lot of grief. But she's hoping this new house will be something good to focus on. And then they start finding bones in the backyard. Bones of dogs, animals. And after they find the first set of bones, there starts to be an infestation of cockroaches that are just completely out of control. And it goes from there. I won't say any more, but whoa. This was a very tense story and very, very, very good. Scary, creepy, icky kind of read. I also read a book of poetry. I started writing poetry this month. I'm taking classes from Matt Wall. So I read The End of Everything by Matt Wall, who has a channel, The Paperback Junkie. This was a fantastic book of poetry. This is so real and raw and emotional and really takes you on a journey through these moments that were really difficult. You could feel that struggle, and yeah, it took me on an emotional journey. I could really relate to some of the poems, and I think that every single poem did its job of really portraying the mindset behind it. And the last book that I'm going to talk about that I read for Indie Accords Readathon is my only fantasy book. That is Serafinas Lament by Sarah Chorn. This is a dark fantasy book. It is my standout book of the month, my favorite. I absolutely loved this story. It is such an emotional read. I can tell that Sarah Chorn is a master at bringing out and describing the emotions of characters very, very well. This is a bleak, dark story, and it is set in this world, a very magical world, but most people are having less and less magic, except for a few that their magic is kind of going out of control. So it's very imbalanced. Things are not quite right in the world, and the world is obviously in this book not doing well. People, it's not raining. There's this horrible drought. Food is becoming more and more scarce, and people are fighting for the small amount of resources, and most of the resources are going to the top of the ladder, basically. So there's a lot of social unrest, and the leader is trying to lead with an iron fist, and yeah. And there's all these completely unforgettable characters. Really interesting but very, very sad backstories that really made this book, this fantasy book, stand out amongst so many others. And yeah, Love this book. I can't wait for more books to come out in the series. This is the first in a new series. And I'm definitely going to be checking out more from Sarah Chorn, because this is the kind of writing that I am into. This is definitely up my alley. So that's what I read for the Indie Accords Readathon. 10 things. If you've read any indie books this month, I'd love to know what your favorite was, and have you read any of these books I talked about? What did you think of them? Have I made you interested in reading any of these books? Love to talk about all of that down in the comments, and I will be back very soon with another book-related video. Thanks.